What's up, true nerds? This is Drowley, and we got Cobbsy coming at you this week with episode 7 of our weekly gaming podcast.
How's it going, everyone?
What's how have you been this week?
Pretty good, man. Just got a new puppy, so that's been keeping me busy. But slow gaming week. I was on vacation for a couple of days, and then we ended our vacation with getting the puppy, so I was too exhausted to play last night. Earlier this week, just strictly Halo, as you know. But yeah, it's just been kind of a low video game week. But me and Heather have been watching a lot of superhero movies, so I love the hat. Your hat is awesome.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
What about you, man?
Yeah, so same kind of like light week on gaming with you being gone. I tried to play some Destiny. It's still kind of boring. Our good friend Jackson was we played for a little bit, and then like our schedules just didn't sync up. Like he's in a different time zone, so I got back on late at night. He's like already in bed because he's got to work the next day. So didn't do much of that. Played a little bit more of the Halo campaign. It's been going good. Then before you got on tonight, I was playing some Halo free for all to try and finish up some of my weekly challenges.
Okay. I haven't played that yet, so
yeah, it's not bad. I got dumped. I like came in third, and a couple of fifths, and then last game I got first. Some of my challenges haven't been registering, so I ended up playing like 8 free-for-all games because I needed 5.
Interesting.
It just wouldn't count. I don't know, it was really annoying because I don't like free-for-all
Right.
generally at all. But other than that, yeah, I've been just been catching up on my Spider-Man shows.
Yes. So that's going to get us into today's episode. So today, Drowley has a great idea. Me and my wife went back and watched the old Spider-Man original 3 movies, and Dan just saw the new one, No Way Home, I believe it's called. Right, that just came out on the 17th. So we've been talking a lot of superhero, a lot of Spider-Man specifically. Dan is a huge Spider-Man fanboy, so he is going to be ranking his movies in order from least favorite to favorite. I'm going to chime in when I get a chance. I've seen all the movies, but I've only seen them all once. Besides the original 3, I've seen them multiple times. So with that, Dan, the stage is yours.
All right, so we're going to start off with number 7 leading up to number 1. With number 7, Spider-Man 3 from the original series with Tobey Maguire. This one was kind of hard to place because initially when I watched this one in theaters, it was very disappointing. The ending just kind of like didn't really know what it was going for. It kind of felt like a jumbled mess, and then it kind of like ended is what I remember it being. Now I went back and watched it again this past week before No Way Home, and if I go in with like certain expectations where I know Venom is going to not be handled correctly as a character, and that's not the reason I'm watching the movie, it actually is a really good movie. It has a really good message. It ends like in a really good way, and so I actually liked it a lot more than I initially did. But there's a lot of other good Spider-Man movies out there, so this one just kind of unfortunately ended up at number 7.
Okay.
And just partly because I like growing up, and I don't know if this was kind of the same for you, but I watched a lot of like how I got my like Spider-Man became one of my favorite heroes was watching Saturday afternoon cartoons, and they had this just great Spider-Man TV show, and like it was awesome. I loved it. But Venom was like hyped up in that series. He was a reoccurring villain. He never could kind of like, they always did battle, and that show kind of left a lot of people thinking that Venom was one of the main, if not the main Spider-Man villain, next to kind of like the Green Goblin and Hobgoblin. But if you kind of are more like true to the comic books, he's not really in it that much, and he's not up there on the level of Green Goblin or Hobgoblin or anything like that. So the director didn't want to do it, but the production team and like the people behind the whole movie were like, no, he's like a massive fan favorite. We have to get him in this movie. And it ended up outselling the other 2 previous Spider-Man movies alone, just on the promise of us seeing Venom in that movie. And so
I think the hardest thing with Venom, he's an extremely misunderstood character. Like you said, people don't know if he's the main villain or what. So
yeah, and
getting
sometimes he helped out Spider-Man.
right, so
So
getting him on screen is extremely hard to make a audience who doesn't understand Spider-Man as much. And I'm not as versed as you are by any means, but I understand that portion. But the normal audience who's going to look, they want to see him as strictly a villain, or a friend or what have you. So I think getting him on the big screen was an extremely challenged
oh, for sure. And and you could kind of
goal.
tell the director didn't really want a lot to do with it. He kind of got shoehorned in there a little bit, and the character was kind of molded to fit a specific theme of Spider-Man. So what the original trilogy did really, really well was each movie had a theme, and they all kind of centered around responsibility. And so the first one was him accepting that responsibility of being Spider-Man.
Mhm.
With great power comes great responsibility, because he's an orphan and his uncle died, and he just wanted the power and revenge. And so he comes to terms with like what that responsibility is and what he has to do with it. And the second movie is what happens if he runs away from that responsibility. And the third one is what happens if within that responsibility he gets like too much ego into it. He
Right,
likes
he gets
the
arrogant.
yes, correct. And so each one had a very specific theme. They all built on each other. Those were great. When you go back and watch it, you can really see that theme progression. It's awesome. But yeah, so Venom was kind of molded and his character changed to fit that narrative. And I think that's why a lot of people kind of found it subpar, disappointing.
Right.
But going back and with that knowledge, going back and watching it, it's a really good film. But
Mhm.
there's a lot of other good Spider-Man movies out there. So that's why that one made the bottom.
So that was
Um,
number 7.
that
What
was number 7.
what do you got for number 6?
All right.
I'm
I
writing
don't
this.
think I'm
I'm
gonna
writing this down, by the way. Just
taking
just yeah,
taking notes.
taking notes from the king.
So number 6 was Homecoming. And this one, like this one was also like I think the bottom ones were harder to place than the top ones
I
here.
agree. I was mentally doing it before we got on here, so
Yeah.
I 100% agree with that.
And I really like Tom Holland as an actor, and I think he does a pretty good job with Spider-Man, but that one just was kind of the least appealing to me. It was a good first film. I was like, when we were watching it in the moment, Spider-Man's back at Marvel. Everyone's just excited to have Spider-Man back at Marvel. And really, you were just happy about what that meant for the MCU. Spider-Man can now be in the Avengers, right? We're all happy. Everybody's good. When kind of really, if you rank them against the other Spider-Man films, doesn't have any deep themes that it runs through. You don't see any pain and any emotion or like deep emotion. So you just kind of see Tom Holland dealing with finding out that his crush's dad is like a super villain kind of a deal. And that's kind of it, right? Like all the other movies, well, except for the other Tom, I think the biggest part of the Tom Holland movies is there's no like Uncle Ben doesn't die, his parents
Right.
don't go
There's no
away.
pain leading into the
Yeah,
background.
correct.
Like
Which I understand why they didn't want to do another Uncle Ben dying kind of thing, because he's died how many times.
right.
Nobody wants another origin story. So at the time, it was really refreshing and really good. Going back and watching them, it just like doesn't hit home for me again like the other ones did.
I think we talked about this on a previous podcast. My biggest issue with Homecoming, there's too much out of suit time. And the character building that they did wasn't genuine to me. I, I felt like it was a lot of forced comedy to prove that they wanted this character to be kind of a lighthearted character, which is fine, but some of it just felt forced to me. And that's just my opinion.
Yep. And it can come across as a little forced. I think the comedy that they were doing was a very specific kind of comedy and kind of like targeted like that. And I think it did well at what it was trying to do, but yeah, it just like There's not. It's at a very surface level kind
And
of deal.
I'm not saying I don't like Tom Holland at all.
Yeah.
I think he's great. I just felt sometimes it was like almost cringy to me. Me and Heather loved it, seeing it. We loved it. Had a lot of fun watching it. But sometimes I'm just like another one, and it got a little obnoxious for me. But
Yeah, for
anyways.
sure. So then, so that was number 6. Number 5 is Far From Home. So this one, kind of ranks more in the like the bottom part of the lower or the top part of the lower categories, but the bottom part of the middle, I think it's like a pretty solid film overall. Some pretty cool twists and turns in it. Some decent action, and like the ending kind of left you kind of in shock, um and so that those parts of it were cool, but like again, no consequences, no emotion like the other ones have. There, in my opinion, are better Spider-Man movies out there. There's a lot of good ones. What were your thoughts on Far From Home?
I like Far From Home better than Homecoming. I'll give you that. Very unique. Very unique. Without getting into spoilers, but the overall concept of it, I enjoyed it. You'll get into the other movies ahead of this one, obviously, but it was one of those where I enjoyed watching it, but I had, more more love for the Amazing series.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
same. Honestly, I would rank those two right alongside, but Far From Home's a little bit better than Homecoming. You had more in suit time, but also the character building I think was better. It really showed his nerdiness, I guess you could say, when he's
Yeah.
trying to chase Mary Jane, and they did a very good job with that, and him trying to impress her the entire time, which I really enjoyed. So I think that was more back to the Spider-Man roots of him being obsessed with Mary Jane. But it was
Actually,
a little
her in the Tom Holland series, it is MJ,
or yeah,
but her
I'm
name's
sorry.
not
I'm
Mary
sorry.
Jane.
I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. See, got to correct me on that. So MJ, I apologize for that, but it shows his obsession, but in a little bit different of a twist, more of a nervous obsession versus just being awkward
Yeah.
obsession.
And there was some really good action scenes throughout the whole movie. The ending
I agree.
action scene was really good. There was some like pretty cool in the middle when he's fighting some of those like
The elements.
especially the elements like I think the water one in the beginning. There was the leaning tower and all the
Yeah.
Italy stuff. That was just like a lot of fun.
I
The
agree.
beginning of it with them taking the road trip, just classic, like
Yeah.
high school, kind of teen like fun or whatever, and him
Right.
trying to chase around MJ, and there's some really good parts of that movie, but yeah, it's just like there's also a lot of good Spider-Man movies.
My favorite part of that movie is not even Spider-Man and MJ, but it's actually his best friend and their new love affair.
Yes.
That was that was so comical to me, and it's so true. When you look back and look at some of your relationships, you're like, oh, it's so cringy, but it's so funny because it's so truthful.
Yeah.
So that I think the comedy was well done in that movie, way better than the Homecoming
I agree.
one. So
I agree. Yep. So that's why I rank Far From Home better than Homecoming.
okay.
All right. So number 4, so now we're getting into the top half, and all these I'm starting to we're starting to split some hairs here, with the exception of my number 1. These next like 2 are kind of on equal playing field with some of the other, and then the other one's kind of like being farther and farther ahead. But Amazing Spider-Man comes in at number 4.
Really? Okay.
Yep. I mean, I love the series. I love him as an actor. But the villain wasn't as compelling to me. So that's why this one kind of gets like bumped out, is really good world building, awesome Spider-Man. I really like how they took a darker side to things, and so I've been doing some more research. And initially, I wasn't sure about who's this actor Spider-Man?
We're both blanking here.
I can picture his face.
We literally talk about this all the time.
I talk about him all the time.
I'm gonna have to look this up quick.
Um, but I think he took a very different approach to Spider-Man, and he's actually I
Andrew
think out of
Garfield.
Andrew, thank you, Jesus, Andrew Garfield, he's actually a really big Spider-Man fan, and
Okay.
so he did a ton of research, and he had a very specific way he wanted to play Spider-Man, which I think was more true to the original comic books. Of he is a kind of jaded orphan, like, so his parents left him. You're not going to just be this happy-go-lucky
Right.
guy when you're staying with your aunt and uncle, right? Like, it's not just going to be like, oh yeah, whatever happens to me happens. Like, I'm just happy to be here. No, you're going to be kind of edgy. You're going to be on edge. You don't know why you were abandoned. You're going through a lot of tough things in high school. Kind of being on the outside of things, and so he plays kind of that. And then when people kind of knock his, like, oh, he's too cool of a Spider-Man. He's too cool to be Spider-Man, because Spider-Man's always kind of like that nerdy
Hmm.
outcast kind of a person. And part of that is I think he's just a really good looking actor. So a lot of it just comes across as
Oh,
him
man
being
crush
cool.
going on.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But he actually said some of this in interviews, and I think it's really true once you think about it. Is the only times that he kind of comes more across as cool is after he gets his powers. He becomes more confident and
Right.
cocky with that, and that kind of can come across as this like coolness like factor, which I think you would definitely do if you're kind of on the outside, and then you get this incredible strength and speed and power. So that's where um Tom Holland or Tom Holland, Andrew
Andrew
Garfield's
Garfield.
like Spider-Man character comes from. And so with kind of that and rejudging it, and I rewatched him this week, amazing job as Spider-Man.
Hmm.
Gwen Stacy, what a cast. She's excellent. And she does way more than, some of the other like love interests do. She's always involved in everything. I really like it. I like how, her dad was the police officer, and it kind of, his death kind of scars Peter from
Right.
in the next movie, of letting her get too close to what's going on with all the Spider-Man things. So that's why Amazing Spider-Man is number 4 for me. Is
The villain.
the villain, the Lizard Man. It was cool, but just not as compelling of a character as a
I think
villain.
I think he the background behind the villain leading into the transformation was done extremely well. The point of it, the purpose, why is he testing? I think that was all done great. But when he actually transformed, kind of lost me. So I agree with you 100% there. And as far as Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker goes, the chip on his shoulder that he has from being left as a child, I think he played that to a T. I think he did extremely well. I don't side with anyone who says he was too cocky of a Spider-Man or too confident. I think he through and through did Spider-Man justice.
And for sure. And I think once Peter Parker becomes that Spider-Man, that's where his quick wit kind of comes from. Is from a little bit of that cockiness, right? Like, he's a pretty incredible superhero,
right?
And he just like, everything's a little bit like lighthearted to him.
He has fun with it.
And he mostly like he pulls his punches. So any out of any of the superheroes, like, he can, if he wound up, he could kill somebody. So, and Spider-Man doesn't kill people, so he pulls all of his punches. He extends the fights out to try and like, save the person.
He chips away at him. He starts light and then slowly gets heavier until he can actually, stop them, not kill them.
Right. And I think, and out of all of them, I think Andrew Garfield got the cockiness in battle, the quick wit, the best. Like,
I agree.
He taunts some of his like enemies, or like, in mid fights, and I love that. And that's kind of what he always did. He'd call him some like lighthearted names, or he'd tell him a joke, or whatever else. Like, that's more of the Spider-Man that I'm kind of used to, and I think he did a really good job. And especially looking back at it, I think growing up, it was a little bit like misunderstood. A lot of people like really liked or thought that Tobey Maguire did a better job at Spider-Man, or became Spider-Man better. And so when Garfield took a different shot at it, or a different approach,
people don't like change. That's
what
it is.
So, but going back, Amazing.
Yeah, hands down. Andrew Garfield's my favorite Spider-Man. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
put that out there. So
I agree. All right. So number 3
number
is
3, top 3.
Spider-Man 1. The
Okay.
very first one. It has an amazing villain, Willem Dafoe. Peter Parker, or Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker. He isn't the best Peter Parker, but he does his job of progressing the story and the themes that the director wanted as Peter Parker really, really well. And I think he was one of the more relatable Spider-Mans. So Andrew Garfield, I think he's the best and some of the closest to like what the comics kind of were, or some of the cartoons that I'm used to growing up with. But I can't really relate to, like, he's this really good looking actor, like comes across, can be either cool or cocky. And it's like, nope, that was not my experience growing up at all. I did not have girls looking at me. I never went out with the Gwen Stacy's like in high school. But Tobey Maguire really captured this like every man kind of high school student. I think everybody can have a situation where they can relate to Tobey Maguire in high school as Spider-Man like pretty well, and just like growing up next to the really attractive girl next door,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody else is there for her, and nobody else kind of like supports her outside of high school, and he does, and so that's like her attraction to him.
Right.
And I think they did that really, really well.
Yeah,
And so
I'd agree with that.
and the direction of it is, the action wasn't the best, some of the other stuff wasn't the best, but the world building was really good, and they created this awesome mirror of not Harry Osborn, who is his dad, Norman Osborn,
Mm-hmm.
and Peter Parker both get powers at the same time.
Right.
They both have these powers and this responsibility, and one chooses to selfishly take it, and the other chooses, or kind of gets taught through pain and the death of his uncle, to use it for good. And they diametrically oppose each other and keep kind of bumping head to head. And I just, if you kind of look at that as through a direction and character and villain standpoint, it's really good job. And man, did Willem Dafoe make a Green Goblin.
Yeah. He, just the creepiness of him that he can play as an actor. And obviously we all have a lot of nostalgia for Spider-Man 1 because that's what we grew up with. So it's going to be ranked high. I mean, it was one of the first superhero movies that made it big.
That was very successful.
Right.
Yeah.
So
that's the one that kind of started this whole superhero arms race of companies, is because some of the Batmans were good, but they didn't like do that well at the box office, and they either tried to appeal way too much to the comic book nerds.
They were very niche.
Yeah. Whereas this one appealed to everybody.
Right. Sorry, go ahead.
It just showed that like it wasn't just for nerds anymore kind of deal. It was the general audience liked that.
Yeah. You always saw him. I mean, you still see Spider-Man 1 through 3 on TV. Spider-Man, me and Heather just watched it in our hotel room this weekend, and phenomenal. Like, I've seen that thing probably 20, 30 times. Just because it's on TNT all the time, or USA or whatever it's on. And
it's a good one.
Yep.
So, all right. So number 2.
I already know it.
Spider-Man 2.
Yep.
This one just was, it captured everything the first one did, but kind of did it better. And Doc Ock wasn't like as great of a villain, but he was a more relatable villain, a more real villain. He was a nice guy, and and someone very similar to Parker, where he saw responsibility and he wanted to use it for the greater good of mankind. But once you get that taste of power in your hand, he kind of turns to this like selfish nature. Everything was about, he's doing it for the greater good, doing it for the betterment of mankind, creating this sustainable energy. But once the sun in the palm of my hand, this ego steps in when he got to that point, and it clouded him, and he became a villain. And then obviously, like, the suit, like, he had the inhibitor chip broken, and so his AI was kind of talking to him and taking over a little bit. But the ego was still there. It was there before the inhibitor chip broke, and so it kind of shows like what can happen with the responsibility if you choose to,
go down
the ego side of it like come into you and not be the altruistic kind of hero.
Yeah, that movie. So they do a really good job of him starting out with a goal in mind, and he's very confident on what he wants to do. And he gets to the point where he's solving this problem, but he doesn't want to listen to anybody else when they're saying, "Hey, it's dangerous" or this or that. And he's so egotistical that he just continues on, and then that's when he starts spiraling down.
Yeah,
So
yeah, for sure.
yeah, that's a good
And then
movie.
it was, and it had just the train fight scene.
That or the skyscraper fight scenes.
Or this, yeah,
Yeah.
just some of the best Spider-Man fight scenes and what they could do, and they're throwing stuff at each other and they're doing different things with what would a spy, just like doing some awesome work. And they did a lot of CGI, but they also did a lot of like practical effects. Like the next shot would be a practical effect, and it really built up that world as like it was real. And so they did what they could do with practical effects, and they just used CGI where they needed to. And that's why I think that fight scene still holds up really, really well. And him holding back the train and everything.
I actually told Heather was in the can't remember, I don't know if she was putting her makeup on or doing her hair or something. When we were in the hotel room, I actually had her come back in for the train scene when he stops the train, because it is one of those movie scenes that everyone remembers, where they pass him back and the little kid comes up with his mask and say, "We won't tell anybody, mister."
Yeah.
That just still gives me goosebumps. It's such a good friendly neighborhood Spider-Man thing where everyone's rooting for him.
Yes.
So
And I think the original trilogy did that better than any of the other ones did. Is they built this world of New York as this alive and living place, and they always cut to random people on the street. What are your thoughts on Spider-Man? A guy with 8 arms sounds hot, like just really weird and wacky things of different people. And they made this world feel really alive. And then like in that, like in each of the movies, like there's the scene on the bridge in the first one where they're throwing stuff at the Green Goblin. Hey, you mess with, New York, you mess with all of us, kind of a deal where the shot of togetherness, and the city is like together with its people. And then them saving Spider-Man after he saved him, like it's kind of this symbiotic relationship. And none of the other movies like really did that super well. There's in the Amazing Spider-Man, there's the shot where the cranes come across and line it up, and so you get a little bit of that sense that they were trying to copy that, but they really don't do that in any of the Far From Home or the Homecoming or Far From Home movies. So I think they kind of like left some of that parts out that like a lot of people really liked. But Spider-Man 2 was an incredible movie.
I agree. So here we are, number one.
This one, hands down, not even a choice, not even close. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is the best Spider-Man movie, not only because it has the best Spider-Man in it, but it has just amazing and incredible character development and character building and awesome action scenes and a great villain, 2 villains that like felt like really good and in their place. And I think they mishandled Electro a tad bit. Obviously, Jamie Foxx did a great job of playing that character.
He did.
And I liked what they were trying to do with the like him being all blue and electrified. Looked kind of cool, but they almost like Jamie Foxx looked worse, like they downgraded him.
Right.
He's a good looking guy as well. And so he could have been like a little bit more of a character in that one, but and I kind of like how they went with a different kind of Green Goblin origin, where the reason they call him the Green Goblin is because his like skin turns green and he kind of looks like a goblin. So
yeah, I did like that the way that they transformed Harry into the Green Goblin was phenomenal. He was creepy, and it went along with the themes of the Amazing Spider-Man of being darker.
Yeah,
instead of being like a cartoony mask, what to the Green Goblin's mask is it's genuinely scary, but when you actually have his face kind of embedded with the chip itself, and really good. I really like how they did the Green Goblin in that movie, for sure.
For sure. And then like it was so dark, and I don't want to like spoil anything, but man, it did such a good job of, if anybody hasn't seen it, which you should have by now. But just an incredible ending and character building, and the first one led, like the story and themes of the first one led right into this one, and every time like Gwen Stacy would like try and get involved, he's like trying to push her away and can't, and it all drives home the ending theme.
Yeah.
And just so emotional. I just watched it again and texted you earlier this week. Like the music in that movie was insane. Hans Zimmer made it, and man, can he just like make you feel stuff. With the electro theme when he starts up, when he comes onto the scene,
walking down the street.
Yeah, just awesome sound. Like I was listening to it on my surround sound system with the volume cranked up, and I was just like, oh my goodness. And then like the ending fight scene, there's all those like pillars, and he's bouncing around from electric pillar to electric pillar, and each one is making a sound, a noise, and it's mirroring his like leitmotif or his theme. And Spider-Man's like, man, I hate this song, as he's getting his ass beat. It's just like, dude, this is so good.
Yeah, that's we were pretty close with what I thought for the order of the movies, but number one by far for me too, Amazing Spider-Man 2. I had so much fun watching that. The ending was the best ending of a movie I've seen in a long time. It was one of those endings where you thought it wasn't over. It just caught me by such surprise.
Yeah.
The twist of it. My wife was like, no. No, she didn't believe me, or didn't believe it happened. I'm like, no, it did.
I didn't either at first.
She's like, no, it was super good. So,
and then what I did like about the Amazing Spider-Man series is like after the ending fight, they have a pretty lengthy kind of like epilogue afterwards of what happens, what he does after that big fight scene. And I thought they did that just incredible in the Amazing Spider-Man 2. Like, that movie ended and I was like in tears.
Right. The way they transferred, I'm trying not to ruin anything, but the way they transferred from the what happened, how he takes what happens, and how he recovers from what happens was so good. And it's like a 15-minute epilogue.
Yeah, at least.
At least. So awesome, man. Well, that was fun to hear. That was a fun episode. So there you have it. Those are the orders of Spider-Man from Drowley. I agree with most of it, but I'm not the king of Spider-Man, so I'm just gonna bow down.
I'm not the king either, but I am a big fan. I am a big fan.
So that's all we're gonna have. We're trying to keep these a little shorter than we have been, but it's a learning experience for us. So
throw some comments in there and say what length do you like more? You like more like trying to keep it closer to half hour? Do you like the longer hour episodes? Should we
45
try and
minutes?
Lock it in at 45? Yeah, what's best for you guys?
Yeah, see, the problem is we can keep talking for an hour or two. So
we can keep going. We gotta pick a couple topics and keep it short.
right. So if you stuck around, we appreciate it. If you liked it, hit the like button. If you want to subscribe, we'd appreciate it. And like Drowley said, comments. So with that, what do you say, Drowley?
Stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy. All right, take care. Talk to you guys next week.